Picture this. You're at the very southern edge of the massive Inca Empire. And right here, a legendary battle supposedly went down. A brutal clash that brought one of the most powerful armies in the Americas to a dead stop. But what if that heroic story isn't the whole truth? Today, we're diving into the Battle of the Maule, a conflict that might just tell us more about how history is written than about the battle itself. You know, for centuries, our view of this whole event has been shaped by images just like this one. On one side, you've got the organized imperial forces of the Inca, and on the other, the fierce Mapuche warriors from what is now central Chile. This was it, the defining moment where two worlds collided right on the edge of an empire. But here's the thing. Right from the get-go, the story gets, well, a little fuzzy. Let's start with the date. When did it happen? Historical records point to dates 60 years apart. Where did it happen? Nobody's really sure. The exact location is unknown. And the result? Even that is totally up for debate. This is less a clear historical event and more of a historical mystery.
So, to untangle all of this, we have to start with the story that everyone thinks they know. The classic, heroic tale of defiance that's been passed down for centuries.
This version of events, the really dramatic one, comes to us mostly from a chronicler named Garcilaso de la Vega. He was writing back in the early 1600s, and boy did he paint a vivid picture of an epic showdown. So, let's set the scene. The Inca Empire is this seemingly unstoppable force, just pushing south. For 6 years, a massive army, we're talking up to 50,000 soldiers, led by General Centurica, has been conquering territory after territory, locking down what is now northern and central Chile. As 20,000 of those Inca soldiers marched south of the Maipo Valley, they finally met their match. A coalition of peoples who absolutely refused to bow down. The Incas gave them a name, from their Quechua language, for savage enemy, the Puramaca. Yeah, this was not going to be an easy fight. Now the Incas offered terms, suggesting peace and submission. The Puramaca's response? It was blunt. It was absolute. They said they weren't there to talk, they were there to fight for their freedom, and they'd do it to the death if they had to. The stage was set for a seriously brutal confrontation. And what a fight it was. Day 1, just ferocious fighting, no clear winner. Day 2, the battle just rages on, same result. By the end of Day 3, both sides had suffered just immense casualties. After a tense pause, on the 7th day, the Puramacas and their allies pulled back, claiming they had won.
And this became the powerful conclusion to the traditional story. The Inca war machine, a force that had conquered a continent, was stopped cold, right there at the Maule River. It's a tale of heroic resistance against impossible odds.
It's a fantastic story. Simple, heroic, clear. But what if it's not the full picture? What if the real reason the most powerful empire in the Americas stopped had nothing to do with one single battle?
And that brings us to a modern reevaluation. See, in the 1980s, a historian named Osvaldo Silva took a much closer look at all the sources, and he proposed a radically different interpretation that challenges, well, pretty much everything about Garcilaso's epic tale.
The first huge problem Silva found was the timeline. The traditional story places the battle during the main Inca conquest, but Silva argues it likely happened much, much later, around 1532. Now, this isn't just some small detail. It completely changes the context. This wasn't a battle of conquest anymore. It was something else entirely.
According to Silva, it wasn't one epic battle at all. He argues the Incas actually pushed much farther south, maybe even as far as modern-day Conception. The famous Battle of the Maule, he suggests, was probably a smaller skirmish that happened while a weakened Inca force was already on its way back north.
And this gets us to the absolute core of Silva's argument. The Incas didn't stop because they lost a battle. They stopped because they chose to. It was a calculated, strategic decision.
So this is the crucial question, isn't it? If that epic standoff at the Maule River didn't happen the way we've been told, why did the Inca Empire, with all its resources and military might, just stop right there?
Silva proposes a much more practical explanation. He says, look, the lands of the Mapuche didn't have big cities or dense populations that the Incas were used to conquering. There just weren't enough strategic incentives, and trying to rule over a decentralized, non-urban society would have been incredibly expensive and difficult.
Let's put this into perspective. When the Incas wanted to conquer the rich, centralized Chimu Empire up north, they invested enormous resources to get it done. The campaign against the Mapuche, though,
It offered way less reward for all the effort required. The Incas were pragmatic. They basically did a cost-benefit analysis.
So at the end of the day, the Inca advance didn't end in a heroic defeat, it ended with a strategic calculation. Pushing further south just wasn't worth the cost. Simple as that. So why does this all matter so much? The difference between an epic battle and a strategic choice? Because it tells us a lot about how history itself is written and rewritten.
The story's evolution is just fascinating. An event happens sometime in the 15th or 16th century. Over 100 years later, an epic story is written about it. Then, centuries after that, a historian proposes a totally new theory using the same evidence, and, you know what? The conversation is still going on today.
This whole debate is such a fantastic reminder that history isn't just a list of things that happened. It's a constant process of interpretation, of questioning old stories and looking at the same evidence from a completely new angle.
Silva's own words really sum it up best. The Inca halt was driven by an unwillingness to commit greater resources. It wasn't about a lack of ability, but a lack of will. The empire simply had bigger fish to fry.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Whether it was a heroic last stand or a calculated imperial decision, the story of the Inca-Mapuche frontier is way more complex than it first seems. It's a powerful reminder that the histories we inherit are rarely, if ever, the complete story.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating final thought. If a story as epic and as established as the Battle of the Maule can be totally reinterpreted, it really makes you wonder, what other parts of history, the parts we all just take for granted, are just waiting for a new perspective to change everything?